Hi guys, so today I've got a video that I've kind of been putting off for a little while, but just because I've got so much points and so much notes written about it, so it's just a bit intense to film. But that is my review of Edgar Allan Poe's The Best of His Macabre Tales, complete and unabridged. Now I don't have the book to show you because I've taken it back to where it belongs, which is its library. Yeah, I was borrowing it for like months on end, so finally finished it and I thought I'd do an in-depth review. So yeah, this was a beast to get through, so I'm probably going to be splitting this review into maybe 3, maybe 4 parts. I'm not too sure just yet, but I'm not going to talk about all the stories in one video because that would just be like 2 hours long. So aside from the stories I briefly recalled reading, I've pretty much gone into this without knowing anything about each of the stories. I didn't know any of the premise or anything at all. It was just a random read that I didn't have any high or low expectations about. So yeah, never read any of them aside from a few particular ones that I have in the past, but I'll probably mention that. I think it has about 27 short stories / poems that someone, I don't know who the editor was, collected and described it as the best of his macabre tales. Did I say macabre earlier? Because I keep saying macabre, but it's not, is it? It's macabre. So I've just got some general opinions of the kind of collection as a whole, so bear with me before I get into individual reviews. Honestly, I don't know if a lot of these works would have stood out for me if I hadn't have had my notes to fall back on. Quite a few of them, if I think of the title now, I won't remember straight away what exactly they were about. I won't remember maybe character names, plot, stuff like that. So I think maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe it's because it's so different to what I usually read, and because there was a lot to read that not a lot of them do stick out. So I'm glad that I wrote notes, otherwise this video would be like non-existent. So this video may include spoilers, so please watch with your own discretion. Some of these might be differently formatted in terms of reviews. Some of the points may be more in depth, some might not be, just because I read this book over a long period of time and it kind of reflects the way I felt whilst reading them. So some of them might be like, yeah, it was okay, blah blah blah, or some of them I might have tried to be more of a scholar in writing a review for. But just let it be known, I am not a scholar. I do not study English literature or anything like that, so it probably comes across as me not understanding a lot of what I read, which is the case. I don't know the in-depth meaning behind anything, so do not hold me to it. It's just opinions that I kind of accumulated through reading, and they may be presented differently over the course of these videos. I found that over the course of this book, where dates were concerned or the last letter of a name, there was like this long dash, as if like, I don't know, the editor or something didn't know the year or the full name of it. For example, 18 dash dash dash. I did find it a little confusing because I wasn't too sure what was going on there, but I am going to just say maybe the year was lost or the editor didn't know the year or something. It was just a bit confusing, so if any of you know what I'm talking about and you have an answer, please explain it. I'd be happy to hear what you have to say. I wasn't expecting illustrations, but I was really thrilled to see them because they added more visual stimulation, especially for more complex pieces of writing. When I was struggling to understand and grasp what was going on, I felt like the little illustrations that was embedded throughout the story kind of helped my understanding, because it, I don't know, as I said, it kind of added to the visual experience, made me understand the words a bit better because I could see in the context that it was supposed to be meant in, I suppose. I really enjoyed the sketchy style of them as well. They weren't quite, you know, awesome artwork, wow, look at this, but they were just enough to help you along your way, I suppose. I wish I could understand the quotes at the start of some of the stories, because I feel like they probably had a big impact on that particular story. I think the majority of the quotes that were used were in a different language, or if not, they were so like lyrical and like, I don't know, it's so strange that I couldn't understand it without, I feel, having to have learnt something similar, if that makes any sense. And just another quick point, when I rated some of the stories low, it wasn't always because I disliked them or found them badly written, of course, unless I state otherwise, but it was more, in my opinion, whether or not I understood them enough to enjoy them properly or appreciated the plot, character development, etc, etc. Some of these I should really mention. I might have included what the plot's about, some of them I haven't. Remember, it's going to be a bit dishevelled in order, so please excuse that, but hopefully you can still enjoy what I have to say. But yeah, now I've got my general thoughts out of the way, I am going to go into more in-depth reviews of some of the stories, and I think I am going to do the first, shall we say, the first 5 Yeah, so that means I'm going to be reviewing The Gold Bug, The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar, MS Found in a Bottle, A Descent into the Maelstrom, and The Murders in the Rue Morgue. Okay, so for The Gold Bug, I gave that a 3 out of 5 stars. This had a really simple plot that kind of skipped to the point quickly and efficiently, yet was still entertaining, so it didn't kind of miss a beat, if you know what I mean. It did get a bit slow when it came to the riddle section of the story, but I still enjoyed the deciphering. Is it deciphering or deciphering? I never know how to pronounce that word. I still enjoyed the deciphering of the text. I think it's because it kind of rekindled childhood memories. You know when you had like those little magazines that kind of had secret codes you had to unlock and sort of figure out what they were saying? Yeah, it kind of reminded me of that, and I really enjoyed that aspect. It definitely brought on themes of kind of like detective exploration and like magic to it, which I wasn't expecting, but I really enjoyed. I really did enjoy the kind of anticipation that this book had as an atmosphere throughout the whole thing, whether it was worry for a friend or the possessiveness of an impending treasure. But I found it to be a bit anticlimactic because I didn't get the supernatural ending that I was expecting from the general vibe of the story, because I feel like the riddles that was mentioned, it kind of added to that, and I started to think, oh, is this going to have like a supernatural element to it or what? And I didn't get that, so it fell a little bit short for me in that aspect, and I was just left with how the riddle was solved, which was kind of boring. The 3 main characters were really interesting, and I enjoyed reading from the point of view of Legrand's friend, of whom I'm not sure we've received a name. I don't know if he had a name mentioned or what, I just can't remember. All in all, it's a very enjoyable story and I totally recommend it. 3 out of 5 stars from me. Next up is The Facts in the Case of M. Valdemar. Some of these stories have really long names and tricky to say words. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I really loved the medical slash sort of mysterious supernatural feel that I got from this story. The illustration like really set the tone, as I mentioned earlier. This was one of the particular stories that I felt like it helped with my experience of understanding some of what was going on, but in saying that, I didn't really understand a lot. In terms of the writing, it had like unusual phrases, unfamiliar words for me. However, I did appreciate how the main character, the kind of person you're reading from, reminds you who certain characters are, because I did end up forgetting quite a few of the minor characters, so that did help me to kind of get perspective a bit more and understand who was who. This story did have an air of creepiness, but by no means was it terrifying. Like, it didn't keep me up at night like worrying that something was going to crawl out of my wardrobe or something. It wasn't scary in that respect. However, I can appreciate its kind of edgy, unnerving atmosphere, particularly for the kind of period that it was set in. I think that helped to create such a creepy atmosphere. Sadly, although it was a good story, it didn't really do much for me in terms of having a connection. It's not something I'd be eager to pick up and read again or buy or go out my way to find, you know, so that's why I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next story I'm going to be reviewing is MS Found in a Bottle. Does that mean message found in a bottle? I think that makes sense. Am I being stupid? Does it mean that or does it not? I don't know. I gave this a 1 out of 5 stars. Oh, and I will quickly mention as well, I went into this, I think I mentioned in my Goodreads review, which I'll leave my Goodreads page down below as usual, that I went into this kind of assuming, I don't know why, that Edgar Allan Poe kind of only did or mostly did Gothic literature, because that's how I knew him. I knew him from some of his, like The Black Cat and I guess The Raven, that sort of stuff. But there's so much more in here than I was expecting. Like, a lot of the stuff kind of involved murder mysteries, so even though I wasn't expecting it, I did actually appreciate the content more than I would have done if it was all Gothic literature, because I think that way it would have been kind of samey. But yeah, this spiced it up a little bit. Thought I'd quickly mention that because I forgot to at the beginning. So for MS Found in a Bottle, I like the concept because you're virtually kind of reading from a dead man's last story to tell, if that makes sense. Well, I mean, he was assumed dead. I felt like he was dead. I don't really know. It was about his final time on the sea, and honestly I wasn't that gripped as I thought I would be. The main reason for this was that it really lacked imagery for me, and when something is really difficult to imagine in your head whilst you're reading it, I find it difficult to absorb and ultimately difficult to enjoy. I mean, it was descriptive, but it was excessively so. Not enough to kind of spark imagination, but more like you're reading a boring essay or something. It was like really overly flourished in the way it was written, that it kind of just lost all sense to me. I didn't really understand much of what I was reading because of the excessive description and the overly flourished words. I mean, I caught glimpses of what was happening and could tell from these like fractions of clarity, if you will, what the general gist of the story was. But for the most part, I just felt like extremely detached from the story, and I hardly understood anything that was happening, so that's why I gave it such a low rating. On to the full story now. This is A Descent into the Maelstrom, and again I gave it a 1 out of 5 stars. This is a shorter review, I really This was another sea story, and there seemed to be quite a lot of these as I went on. Unfortunately, I just didn't have any care for this one. I found myself like completely skim reading it. I just wasn't intrigued, wasn't interested by what it had to say, so I gave it a low rating because I didn't really enjoy it. And lastly, on to the 5th story that I'll be reviewing for this video. I am going to be reviewing The Murders in the Rue Morgue, and I gave that a 2 out of 5 stars. So I was initially happy to have a break from the sea stories when I came to this one, but I wasn't happy to find that the starting portion of this story was so dragging. Like, it was a chore to get through, it really was. Luckily, after Monsieur C. Auguste Lupin was introduced, the pace definitely started to quicken, and I could feel a mystery begin for definite. As I didn't read the first portion of the story properly, I was a little bit confused to the storyline. I still enjoyed the obvious, you know, murder mystery tone, the violent descriptions, and the shocking explanation for the cause of the events that occurred in the story. I think that it definitely got better as the plot was beginning to, you know, get sussed out, if that makes sense. Even though I do feel like I was hindered a little bit by not really enjoying or caring for the beginning half, I still kind of had a bit more satisfaction by the end. But in saying that, I do feel like there was more French influence there, especially as it was set in Paris, so I feel like the terms and some of the phrases used added to my confusion, so that sucked a bit. But anyway, those are the 5 reviews for this. I might do another 5 or whatever in the next video, but yeah, until then, I'll speak to you next time. Bye!
Myself when you turned away from me, when you said I wasn't your life anymore. I wanted to be your future, your greatest joy. Time has buried my plans, buried my desires. It has turned me old, turned me bitter, and left me here in the dark alone.